Hey everyone, I'm Brent Lundell.
And I'm Vanita Patil.
We're co-hosts for the SCORE podcast, How It Was Built.
We invite insightful guests to join us and talk about community hot topics, industry updates, and providing resources to the business community.
Come join us and listen in. Hi, welcome to our monthly podcast. We have two guests today with John Heutmaker from Accurant, and we have Ray McCoy from Minnesota Deed. We are going to begin our talks today with John from Accurant. John, welcome to the podcast.
Morning. Great to be here.
Morning, John.
Give us an overview, John, of what your accounting firm does for the average business owner.
Sure. So we have a couple of different segments within our accounting firm. So we do consulting work for our clients, which would be working with business owners and the leadership team to work with them on their month-end closes, on their financial statements, helping them manage their monthly books, making sure they've got up-to-date and timely information so that they can make the right financial decisions. And we do that kind of soup to nuts, whatever they need from us, anywhere from bookkeeping all the way up to controller type situations. And we provide that in pretty much any industry around the Twin Cities and out of our other offices as well. And then on the tax side, we also prepare tax returns for individuals and corporations, inclusive of C Corps, S Corps, LLCs, but we kind of do run the whole gamut on that as well for our tax services.
Sure. What are some pitfalls you see with some of the small business owners that hire you guys for your services?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that you see is that I think accounting becomes kind of the afterthought for a lot of small business owners. And I've seen it many, many times. There's a lot of business owners that really know their business and know it really well. They can go into a situation and talk to a client or talk to a potential customer of theirs and then give them a good estimate of what it might be to do the services or the product that they're offering. But then when it gets to the backside, when you're at month end, they spend a lot of time looking at their checkbook or looking at the bank online, but they really don't know what's happening from a financial perspective. And sometimes we get involved when it's a little bit more of an emergency situation, which we certainly are happy to be part of that process to help them kind of clean things up and get their handle around it. But it'd be much better if we were there at the front end so we can get them on the right set of tracks going down the right road. And then if they deviate a little bit, we can get them back on the tracks the right way.
That's great. What is your mission or your philosophy with your business?
Well, we've got a couple that we look at. So when I'm sitting and talking to referral sources or new clients, and one thing I want to make sure that they understand is that we're not here to spend their money, right? We're here to offer them the services that they need in a timely and efficient manner. And we certainly aren't going to sit around at their office or at our office for that matter. If we're twiddling our thumbs, we're moving on to something else because it's not right to be billing a client or not doing any work for them and having them worry about that we're kind of wrecking their budget and spending their money. So that's one of our main focuses. And then the other one that I talk about a lot, which is we try to work our way out of a job. So we may get involved with a messy situation where we have a lot of things to do for them, but our whole goal is to try to pare that down, whether we're going to use internal resources or other people within the firm so that they can take on more responsibilities, maybe make their job a little bit more interesting and improve their experience within their job. But our job, if we work our way out of a job, hopefully at some point in time, the business owner says, thanks for everything you've done. We really don't need you anymore. And that's a good thing for us because we can move on to something new and a new opportunity, a new client that needs the help. And hopefully the business owner is really happy with what we've done and they tell two friends and so on and so on. And hopefully there's more opportunities down the road.
So do you also come in as somewhat of a coach and then come back and check in on every 6 months to see if that process is still being in place?
We absolutely can play that role. So, they're really looking to us when we jump in, especially when you're playing an outsourced controller. I mean, we're there to close the books, make sure we know the month end is accurate, work with the management team or the owners on what's been happening, what didn't go so well last month, what went really well, how can you do that better? And the people that we have within Accurant, we've been around the block a couple of different times. So if it's talking about business insurance or employee benefits or HR issues, not that we're necessarily experts in it, but we've been around it enough that we can also lend some information and thought process about how they may be able to do things differently or better to benefit them in the long run.
You had mentioned that most companies acquire your services at an emergency time.
That can happen.
And so how do you approach that? What is it usually solvable, or do you?
Well, most of the time it's solvable. There's moments in time when you may have to kind of draw a line in the sand and say kind of the history is what the history is, and let's see if we can make it better going forward. And we've been in those situations as well. But what we want to really try to do is, philosophically again, is look at the balance sheet. Go down the balance sheet. Start with cash. Has cash been reconciled? Do we know it's right? Do we feel confident in that number? And then work your way down the rest of the balance sheet, whether it's accounts receivable, prepaid expenses, accrued expenses, accounts payable. Make sure those things are right and we have our hands around it. We have account recs and schedules that support that, so we know what's going on. Once we get to that point, then you can kind of take a breath and go, okay, let's look at really what's going on with the business as well.
Well, that's really interesting. I'm sure a lot of companies appreciate your services. Thank you for telling us more about it, and we know that other businesses would come forward, and not during the busy tax seasons, I hope.
We're here for when people need help, they're happy to give us a call, and we'll see what we can do.
That's perfect. Well, thank you again. And thank you for John being our guest, and we will be right back with Ray McCoy.
Hi, welcome to our SCORE webinar. We are briefly going to go over how to navigate on the score.org/Twin Cities website. If you're a business owner, or if you're looking to get into business, or simply have some questions, if you go to score.org, you can go into the menu here and click on Request a Mentor. We then have intake on where a mentor may match up to your skills in terms of industry, skill set, zip codes. Then from there, you can go into our national or regional workshops. So on a monthly basis, we do regional and live national webinars, along with local webinars and workshops in the area. We also have an abundance of templates and resources on our SCORE website. If you're looking for business plan templates, projections, how to fill out a resume type of stuff. But all this stuff is on the score.org website for those members who are looking to get involved. Welcome back to our monthly podcast. We are here with Ray McCoy from Minnesota Deed. Quick special thanks to Brian Brock from Franson Bank and Trust and Cheyenne Varenis from Triton Commerce on sponsoring our podcast. Ray, you're in charge of a very interesting program with Minnesota Deed.
Yes.
Give us an overview of what the program is.
Sure. So it's called the Employer Reasonable Accommodation Fund. And just to give you some brief context on how it started, we understand that with small to medium-sized businesses that they want to do the right thing by having an inclusive workforce, but with that, sometimes the costs are too hefty because of limited reserves. So what happened was the legislature developed this program. It's a 2-year pilot program, which the pilot window began last July. So July 1st of last year through June 30th of next year, in which we get appropriated $2 million each of the fiscal years. So we budget $400,000 out of that for administrative costs, and we have $1.6 million that we can use to help businesses offset costs for reasonable accommodations. And going into kind of like more detail of how it works and what kinds of businesses would be eligible. So first, eligibility for businesses if they're domiciled in Minnesota, have 500 employees or less, and make $5 million or less in gross annual revenue, then they would qualify. And what happens is that if they have either an applicant or an employee with a disability and they purchase accommodations, they would fill out an application on our website, submit the proofs of purchase, and we would reimburse them. And so we can reimburse a business of up to $30,000 each fiscal year.
Okay. And how does the ERAF fund play into this?
So that is the ERAF fund, like what I was talking about. So out of that, that's the program that does the reimbursement, which was appropriate, and the funds were appropriated to us by the legislature.
Okay.
And when you said when they apply for instance, an equipment they've already purchased and they're getting reimbursement, how long would that process take from the time they apply for it to actually getting their funds?
Well, so the process usually takes within 30 days. So once it's submitted, I would review it, and if it's approved, and usually that's review is within 5 business days, but once it's approved, they would get their reimbursement within 30 days of approval.
Okay. And if they did get this equipment and for this a certain employee, and that employee is no longer with that company, what happens? Is there a certain time that employee needs to be at that place of business, or
No.
So
No.
there's no limitations or restrictions on
like,
the
how long
employment status?
Yep. So the thing is, when they purchased this equipment, at the time it was tied to an employee or an applicant with a disability, and when they applied, they was tied to that. So let's say that the person separates, even like a couple of days after it's submitted, then they would still be entitled to that reimbursement because at the time, it was tied to an employer and applicant with a disability. Now, that's not something that we obviously like to see, because one of the goals of the ERAF program is to promote long-term stable employment for people with disabilities, but we understand that life happens as well.
Okay. Can you give us some examples of the equipments that would be funded?
Sure. So things like ergonomic workstations, wheelchair ramps, job coaching, sign language interpretation are, some of the many requests that we've gotten thus far for reimbursement, but other things outside of that count too. So we have a wide range that we could go for, as long as it falls under the definition of the ADA in terms of what a workplace reasonable accommodation is. So as long as that particular, product or service is designed to either help the applicant navigate through the application and hiring process, or if it's designed to help the employee ultimately do a better job or do a effective job by either changing the environment or giving them some sort of like tools and equipment to succeed, then that's something that we could reimburse. It has to be strictly pertain to work, though.
Okay. And then would nowadays a lot of people work remotely, so does that also accommodate for someone working in their home?
Yes.
It does. Okay. And same process. It doesn't matter what location within the office or remotely at the individual's home.
Yep. So we have had some applicants that we've approved who, work remotely.
Okay.
And they checked off all the checkpoints in terms of, they have a disability, they have the business checks off, so that's fine. Because we understand that's a common thing these days too.
Okay. Well, thank you. This is very interesting and helpful, and I'm sure for a lot of small businesses that would be a great resource for them. Thank you for being on the show and explaining this to us. We will be right back with a commercial from the Better Business Bureau.
Every day, customers look online for businesses that seem trustworthy and reputable. Any business can say they're committed to operating with integrity, honoring promises, and telling the truth. But what does it take to actually prove it? Help potential customers make the right choice by getting an official BBB seal of accreditation that lets them know just how credible your company is. Apply for BBB accreditation today and show customers you're the business they've been looking for.